Welcome to a Simulcast podcast. My old friend Nurgling from My Rules Are Better posted on a YouTube video. Now normally I actually have multiple YouTube channels, one of which, called Monty's Reviews, I'll never be able to get access to again because Google has changed their accessing algorithm, and when they tell me that they're sending me a text message to unlock my YouTube channel, it never actually sends. So for folks who are familiar with Monty's Reviews, that channel's just defunct now, which is kind of boring, really kind of boring, because it had a whole bunch of users, and it would be nice to connect with them. Anyway, Nurgling independently flagged a video that I'd recorded about moving folks that were interested in my simulation work from my main channel, which is now known as @Barbley, to Last Monkey Standing, which is now known as @LastMonkeyStanding. It was originally, or maybe Last Monkey, was originally Last Monkey Standing and then some initials, or some letters, or anyway. Enough with regards to what YouTube is. Let's move on from that. Nurgling asked, what's the deal with me in simulation? Look, this is a question I ask myself. This is a question my wife asks me. What is the deal with me in simulation? Well, in 1996, yes, that was a long time ago, I started developing simulation based on a wide variety of other bits and pieces of software that I'd written previously. In fact, simulation was really a distillation of a variety of bits and pieces of software that I'd written historically, games, graphics, engineering stuff, a wide variety of different bits and pieces all put together in this thing called simulation. And I do now a relatively unique kind of simulation. Very few people do the kind of simulation I do. Used to be called artificial life. The folks that were contemporaries of me when I started developing my simulation software, which is now known as the Ape SDK, it's now actually actively recognized as open source, which all these things that I'm talking about take a little bit of time here and there and everywhere, and pretty soon accumulate into a lifetime worth of time. So I've been doing simulation for a long period of time, and I do a very particular form of simulation which is not based on other people's forms of simulation. And it really is a very lonely existence being the last person to do this kind of simulation. I do still have a podcast called The Bioticast, which nominally is for people that were once doing this kind of simulation and still maybe might do it in the future. But I stand alone with regards to the simulation that I write currently. If you want to go to Simulated Ape, which I think you actually need to go to, Ape SDK on GitLab is the open source thing, and you can click on Simulated Ape from there. You can download it if you have a Mac. It used to run on Windows. I think with a little bit of time it'll run on Windows. So if you're a Windows user and you'd like to run some of my simulation software, please get in contact. I have a Windows machine that my wife mainly uses now, but I can commandeer in order to get my Windows simulation running again. Simulated Ape is quite a detailed program. It deals with about 90 apes in a simulated environment. They have internal narrative. They can talk to each other. They have adventures and discussions, and it actually produces a pretty in-depth narrative involving, feeding nits or whatever they're called off each of the apes. They pick the ticks off the apes. Anyway, so they do grooming and feeding and occasionally hit each other and occasionally have disputes and occasionally are romantically inclined. We'll just leave it at that. So, they do a lot of different things that most simulated entities never really do. The whole nature of developing it was called so many different names, but it's now known as the Ape SDK or Simulated Ape, was in order to see how rich a simulation one could actually provide. So this might sound particularly crazy, particularly if you're Nurgling wondering what on earth is the deal with simulation, why do I continue to do it? Well, I've been doing simulation for so long. It's actually quite relaxing to go back periodically, download Simulated Ape, get it running, which actually it runs already. So, yeah, that's just a process one does. And then you get the software that I've written for so many different years, and you get to see the narratives each of the apes is having, all the interactions they're having. The fact that the apes probably live a better life than I live, which is an interesting thing. I've created this utopian environment for these apes in order to interact and live in. And really, it's something where occasionally I'll meet people who say it's amazing that you continue to write the software. That is the resting phenomena that I return to, that it's actually quite interesting that I continue to write the software. So Nurgling, in less than 5 minutes, I hope I've answered your question. Why do I do it? I don't know. I think that's a more profound question to answer. But I do it because I've done it for many years, and because the stuff that I produce, no one else is producing. It would be wonderful if more people would produce it, but they just don't. And a bit like these podcast recordings, a bit like a lot of different things, these are things that I just do because that's who I am. That's what I've done historically. And I genuinely really enjoy people actually using the software and giving me points of feedback. I have a long-standing friend, Bob Mottram, who developed parts of the simulation for various years on and off, and he was also involved with the London 1940 simulation too. And you might ask, well, how does London 1940 fit into all of this? Well, London 1940 just provides a different simulation environment. Same simulated entities. Yes, the Londoners really are apes, after all, and just provides the environment for these simulated entities to wander around. Well, that's the aim of the program. That's what I'm writing it for. So, yes, I don't think I've answered any of Nurgling's question, but it was an attempt, at least on my part. Tom Barbalet in Las Vegas, Nevada, signing out.